Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jamaica Alternative Dispute Resolution Society's Justice Corner, where neutrality and hard arguments converge. My name is Roseanne Allen, and I will be your host for today's show. With me is none other than the Vice President of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union, Mr. Rudolph Thomas. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So tell me a bit more of your role as the Vice President of the BITU.
Well, as a Vice President of the BITU, first let me explain that our structure has 3 Vice Presidents.
Okay.
So you have a Senior Vice President and then you have 2 Vice Presidents. We all report into the President himself. Mm-hmm. My role has certain aspects of administration attached to it. Okay. And you would have that for both internal and external. Mm-hmm. There is this interface that we play in support of the President, especially when we are dealing with persons on the outside. Right. Outside of that, I also have the role attached to me as an education officer, the head of the education department, and that includes me setting up training, different kind of training activities for our delegates and for those who are interested in knowing more about the union. Mm-hmm. We pride ourselves as having the delegates that are most trained, and we try to keep as many of these activities as we can per year.
Well, Mr. Thomas, I've had the privilege of sitting in a conversation with millennials like myself, and the common denominator is that they do not know what a trade union or an industrial trade union entails. What exactly do you guys do? What exactly surrounds the nature of a trade union, and why is it important?
All right, well, what I usually encourage people to do is to stop and think of a trade union not only as somebody who negotiates increases. Mm-hmm. Think of trade unionism as a movement that has been around to protect the interests of the working class, mm-hmm. and it will continue to be around for a long while, right, based on the value that it brings to the whole exchange between worker and employer, right? It's not by, I would say, accident that you have on boards, for example, government boards, there is always a design space for you to have a trade union representative. A similar thing exists in the Senate, where, for example, our president is a current senator, mm-hmm. in the Senate. Those provisions have been made there because of the value that we bring, mm-hmm. to the industrial relations landscape in ensuring that there is balance, mm-hmm. at all times, and that the interests of Jamaican workers are constantly protected.
So let's touch on the value that you guys bring. Is it an indictment on the leadership of the trade union that there's such a big gap between millennials, younger folks, and that's of trade unionism, the movement in itself?
No, I will admit that there can be more opportunities, educational opportunities. We would have taken on, this is pre-COVID, some initiatives where we would go into the schools and talk to persons about trade unionism.
And this is secondary, primary, tertiary?
This would be more at the secondary level. Okay. So we would have done some of those engagements and would have had a lot more schedule to do. Mm-hmm. What we believe is that there has to be some form of education so persons know the full scope of trade unionism. Right. In some persons' mind, they may see us as the person who negotiates, as I say, improvement in salaries, in another person's mind, they might see us as the person who interrupts work or causes strikes. The truth is the more enlightened trade unions have stepped away from certain kind of behaviors, understanding where we are now and understanding what exists in legislation to guide us. And the converse of that is that the enlightened employers also, for example, multinationals, they have embraced the existence of trade unions. They know that we are going to be there. And so there isn't much fight. You know?
And you're saying in the educational aspect, let's touch more on that, because we do learn histories from primary school through social studies, and we learn it through high school, and we move on, if so choosing, in university. So where is that disconnect? Why is it not something that it's deeply rooted or connected more to engage the young people? What's happening? What is the cause of that?
I believe, and it is a personal belief, I believe that with millennials, for example, it has been a shift in how they operate. There isn't this kind of dedicated to an organization, but more goal-oriented kind of perspective on life. So they are here today to use this job to achieve a particular position. That is opposed to maybe my Father's Day, when it's pride and joy to have worked at one organization until retirement, right? So we find the whole need to belong has somewhat waned. There, as I said, admittedly, there is scope for more education, and maybe what we have to do is to study the millennials more and see how we can convert or share with them what we do and the benefits of being a part of a trade union with them, because it's not just the immediacy, right? As I say, it's a movement. Life continues to change, the dynamics of work continue to change, and these millennials are the same ones now that are caught in a dilemma of working from home maybe, right? And taking on new vistas, new ways of working that are unprecedented. And it's actually the trade unions that are trying to bring that balance to the table, you know, to ensure that, for example, there is a right to unplug. So when you are there, or when you are working from home, for example, you recognize that at a certain time you step away, right? I was involved in just today in a conference, a regional conference, and it became very topical because what the evidence is pointing to is that right now we are back at the productivity level per employee is back at what it was pre-COVID, but it's because of working longer hours. Right? So there are those things that we protect. The interests, the rights, the quality of life that we have to look out for our members.
So being a seasoned executive member, how would you propose the trade union to evolve with the changing times?
Yeah, we have evolved and we continue to evolve. The trade unions that you see now operating in this space are not operating in the same way that they used to. Back in 1938, you had a different kind of fight that you had to put up. Now we are at a point where we realize you have to embrace the opportunities for longevity of employment, etc. And for opportunities that come into existence when you have multinationals entering the space, and opportunities even when our workers go overseas. Being the most affiliated trade union in Jamaica, we operate in a space where even when our workers leave here, our members leave here, they can be put in touch with other trade unions within the region.
So I know you spoke about there needs to be more in order to reach out and engage the younger generation. But I have a better appreciation due to my personal studies. And so had it not been for that, I really cannot see where I would have had that same level of appreciation for the trade unions. And yes, you guys have done a lot of work, and yes, it is because of the legislations that you guys were able to spearhead why we were able to benefit through a lot of things in the working world. But for persons my age, younger, a little older, they still cannot connect. And so back to the evolving, when studying how we think, how we view things, how, just off the top of your head, how can you bridge that gap? How can you say, hey, this is still okay. It's okay for you to be a unionist and still be able to accomplish certain things in life. How would you go about that?
Again, it comes back to looking at the trade unions as a part of a movement. The millennials that you're suggesting don't connect now are the millennials that are going through under pressure in their employments. That is why we remain relevant to legislation that affects workplaces, even though we are on the verge of passing, even though it has been long coming and some people make a joke of it. Right. We are on the verge of passing the Occupational Health and Safety Bill. These are things that will impact these millennials, right? And the quality of life and that they share. It comes again from how they are positioned their mind and efforts that we have to now make to ensure that we can meet and braid our existence into their way of operating.
So you think that through online platforms and through going to schools, the different schools to provide workshops on how the trade union works and all the legislations and acts and all of that will benefit them. That is the way forward in order to reach these young people.
Let me suggest to you that if I was to point finger at any failure, it would be failure to maximize the use of social media to engage these persons. I believe that we have done some things online, but the nature of trade unions, where by virtue of the Trade Union Act we don't advertise, is one that has maybe restricted our thinking when it comes to maximizing the use of social media. So that is something that we need to look at. I know that several trade unions though have established their websites, their Twitter handles and their Facebook pages, and that is being used to some extent. But we're still not using the machinery behind it that can target these persons, because we know their way of identifying and treating with them. And I don't think we are in any significant way, really.
So, Mr. Thomas, do you believe in a practical sense that trade unions effectively increase or impact the bargaining power of employees?
Definitely. Definitely. Employees and employers will always have divergent interests. And even when there is a common thought or a common goal or a common place that they want to be, in practicality, how you get there will differ. Because an employer will emphasize on, for example, returns and so on, at the bottom line, rather than getting there. There are other things, for example, as soon as there is need to do a little bit of crunching, it's usually the things such as training and so on that that get cut from the budget first.
Right.
Right? What trade unions ensure is that in the discussion, in the negotiation, because we are negotiators by practice, while you may not be able to do X now, what can you do by way of Y?
Well, there you have it. Special thanks to our guest, Vice President Rudolph Thomas of the BITU. I'm sure we have all learned something new today and have found ways to apply said information to labor disputes. Do have yourselves a wonderful week.